Mike. Okay, you guys, like I mentioned before the break, in light of all the cancellations, including worship services, I've had some requests for homemade communion bread. It actually only takes 3 ingredients. It's pretty simple. This, though, is a no-fail recipe. There's several different things you can do with it. Most recently, Karen from Mooresville requested it. So, Karen, my dear, this is for you. And it's kind of my no-fail communion bread recipe, all right? So it's the fallback. And what it starts with is 2 sticks of butter. Now, one of the keys is throwing that butter in the freezer. You want that butter, that fat, as cold as possible, and then you cut it into cubes. I love to use Kerrygold. I've got some Irish in my blood, and so I love picking up Kerrygold butter, but these days, whatever you can get your hands on works, let's be honest. So you've got your 2 sticks of butter. Now, in a food processor, and I'm going to try to scoot this over here so you can see it, but if you can't, just know that in the food processor, I am putting 2 cups of flour. So that's just all-purpose white flour, 2 1/4 cups actually. And then if your butter is not already salted, like mine usually isn't, I'm going to add a teaspoon of kosher salt. Okay, there you go. Teaspoon of kosher salt in there. And then we add our butter. So frozen cubes of butter. I just chopped them up into cubes really easily. And what we're going to do is put the lid on that food processor. Now, if you don't have a food processor at home, you can take 2 knives and go like this. Pastry cutter will do the same trick. It's a great job for your kids because it takes a little bit longer, but, you know, they need to use the energy and they're at home, so have them do it. Okay, so then you're just going to pulse this. Pulsing right now is your friend when you're making any kind of homemade communion bread. Some of you ladies might notice this looks a lot like pie crust because it's basically the same thing. Let me take the top out here, and then the next thing you're going to add is ice cold water. So to that mixture, once the butter cuts into the flour and kind of looks like the size of, sand. Remember when we used to be able to go to the beach and you'd be able to dip your toes in that nice, fun sand and it'd get all over it? That's what you want your flour to look like, okay? And as you put the ice water in there, you're just going to keep pulsing and it's going to gather. And you're going to doubt me at first, but then the more you pulse, the more it gathers. Okay, so I won't bore you with the rest of the process, but it comes together in a dough. You're going to just plop that dough out onto your clean countertop. Wear gloves if it makes you feel better. Sometimes I've done that even now when I'm cooking at home. And let me, in fact, get a little bit more flour out here. And then you put your 2 balls of dough in 2 discs. Now, if you want, you can freeze it after that. This is also an easy recipe to use for kids. You could put food coloring in it and let them go to town doing different stuff with the dough. If you have leftovers, sometimes what we'll do is even make different little buttery crackers out of it. But communion bread it is today, and so we are going to roll it out to about 1/4 of an inch, and then take any kind of a circle that you have at home, whether it be like a circular cup or Tupperware that's about 3 inches. At this point, you can do whatever you want. So this is about the circle that I use. And then just put it down. Now from here, I've set my oven to 375 is what I want to cook this at for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how much you roll out that dough. I usually score it at this point, but make sure even if you don't score it in squares, what you want to do is take a fork and poke it, okay? So it doesn't get too much air in it. Here's what you got. I want to make sure and show you the finished product before I have to quit. Okay, this is what you have. You have flaky, easy